Hey everybody, Steve here for Who Took My Dice Miniature Wargaming. Welcome to my video concerning 3D printing. Now before we dive into that though, if you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the like button, and make sure you hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Here we go. All right, so 3D printing. It is something that I've been messing around with for the last little while now, printing things off here and there. I know a few people who have the machines and the necessary materials. Definitely something very, very cool, and something that I think, given enough time, will end up being one of the major ways we get our models in the future. That's just sort of my prediction, right? So if you're not familiar with 3D printing, it's a computer-based printing system using STL files for the most part, which are stereolithography files. Basically allows you to print out these 3D shapes that you've either built or found the files for, and allows you to have these printed things that goes around following a particular pattern until you have your printed object. It goes from anything from pieces I've seen to where you can build prosthetic arms to, well, building miniatures, Dungeons and Dragons, stuff based off of whatever anybody wants to build, right? Excuse me. But it's one of those things that I've really kind of looked at as, yeah, possibly one of the future ways we will get our models. There's lots of Kickstarters that use it to make their models, to create their product. It's got a relatively, depending on the machine and the programs you use, it can either be relatively inexpensive or very expensive product to get into. I've seen many companies come and go who started, with it, lots of machines printing terrain or models they created, but eventually the cost of replacing parts, replacing machines catches up with them, and eventually they just can't keep up, or maybe they can't keep up with the demand, and people move on to someone who can. My first introduction to 3D printing, really, I mean, I've heard about it for years, but when I first started something was in 2015, when I was actually in college again, getting my computer service tech diploma. And it was actually for a class we had to do on a technical writing class. I had to write a technical report on how it worked, with examples. And I have actually, one of the things I did, it's actually a little barricade that was based on, I think, the Games Workshop train set there with the barricades and the gun there. It was really cool because I got to look into how it would affect the industry, and again, it was something that's based off someone else's intellectual property. Now, this is pretty basic. It looks like just a barricade, but it's definitely based off that design. You can print off a whole bunch of them. It actually came with its own little gun as well, much like that quad gun that comes with the set. It was actually the interesting and funny part about that is when I was actually doing my interview with the teacher about it, she wanted me to see if I could find the file again. I went to it. I got the 404 error. It wasn't there anymore. So it had been taken down at some point. That's what I really want to get into. All the building is really cool. I mean, when you have the programs, you can mess with the level of detail in the model, the density, how full it is or how empty. You can mess with the thickness of the layers. You can mess with the speed, the temperature, everything to do whatever you need to create this fantastic creation of yours, right? The difficult part, with all this, is when it comes to intellectual property, and that's the one thing I've noticed big time with this is the intellectual property side of it. A lot of things like Thingiverse, I think that's it. Thingiverse, what I go to, a lot of it's free. All right, people just making stuff, and you have everything from stuff that's been scanned in. There are actually scanners, so it's very highly detailed. You know this has been based off someone's an actual model. Doesn't matter who the company. To things that people have created just as proxies. I've seen a lot of Dark Eldar proxies on there, and they look horrible, but they're designed so you can print them out quickly, create a force. That way you can play with these models to see if you actually want to start the army before you actually go out and buy the actual models and put the time and energy. And proxies, that's a whole other video. I can get in that, the upsides and dangers of proxies. I'll get in that another time, maybe. But I want to dive into some of the models that I printed off here, and also what I've looked up. I've actually looked up to see what some of these companies have to say about intellectual property and where that's going. So first off, again, little barrier. I printed that off. That was done at the college I went to. Wasn't highly detailed. You could see the lines where it gone back and forth. More recently, I printed off things like this. This is a Dark Eldar Battlefleet Gothic ship. Not one that I actually don't think existed. I've seen the Dark Eldar Battlefleet Gothic ships. This one was probably taken maybe from the current game. Someone did it up. Now, again, this is someone's model. I don't think it's taken off anything original. However, it is using the name Dark Eldar. It is in the same sort of aesthetic as the Games Workshop owned property. There's also this one here. This is actually one of their jet fighters, the Dark Eldar jet fighter. Again, this is one someone shrunk down and said they were going to use for Epic. It's much too big for Epic. This one, as you see, I was messing around with the densities very often. This one is almost see-through, and it printed out pretty well, though. Again, this was definitely something that someone built, but it is based, again, on a Games Workshop intellectual property design. Then we have something like this. This is one I printed off of just messing around with the color. They called a Imperial Transport Pad. It's got the all-terrain symbol on there. Or is it the Omega symbol? You can never really tell. Again, this is something that's sort of floating around in that gray area. It's got what could be seen as a Games Workshop symbol, but it's definitely on something that Games Workshop has never built. So where am I going with that? Is that it's a great area. It's definitely been created by someone else, but it is using symbols or images or designs that someone else has created. The other one I have, this one, I actually found this one out. I talked about this one before. This is a giant worm I printed off. This is actually owned by, I think it was Rocket Pig or something like that, the company name. I actually found it online. They don't produce it anymore. But again, this was one of their designs at one point, and someone obviously scanned it or somehow got a file on it, and I was able to eventually find it, print it off. There you go. So it goes to them again. No money changed hands, so it's in that gray area. Now I'll get to a few more here. The other one, this one's very interesting. This little guy here, very hard to see. I actually had to paint him up because I used in the same sort of material here, so he's very hard to see. So I just put a black coat on him. Actually, see the details. This is Dungeon Master from the 1980s D&D cartoon. I'm really not sure who owns the rights. I looked it up. Obviously, someone does because a European car company made a commercial last year for their car using the D&D characters. People, obviously actors, portraying these characters. So obviously somebody still owns the rights to this. Could be Wizard of the Coast. I don't know. Again, this was designed. Someone made this up, put on Thingiverse for free as sort of an ode to that crazy little character. And this one's one of the definitely a design that's been people recognize. You may recognize that. It looks a lot like Luke's Landspeeder. Now, obviously, there's some differences. There isn't the third turbine there, but it definitely looks like Luke's Landspeeder, right? Even came with a base, which I printed off. Again, this was just to show. I mean, that is definitely Star Wars. It's I think it was Sci-Fi Landspeeder's name. It's definitely Star Wars, though, right? And again, that's owned by Disney now. They're very big on their intellectual property, protecting it. And there's even the Star Wars tabletop game now, which I think this may have been designed off, even though it does have characters that come with it and has that third turbine on the top. It's still in that gray area. Now, I've looked up I've got them right here, some things. Intellectual property at Games Workshop. I looked up Warlords. I worked Warlord Games, and even Privateer Press. Those are some of the bigger ones. And there's really nothing in there when it comes to actually the 3D printing itself. There's lots of stuff about trademarks, about using images when they ask you not to. A lot of it is it's really not there. Warlords, again, intellectual property. The names and images identifying Warlord games or third parties and their products and services are subject to copyright, design rights, and trademarks of Warlord games or third parties. Nothing contained in these terms shall be construed as conferring or by implication as stop as I don't even know how to say that word, or otherwise any license or right to use any trademark, patent, design right, or copyright of World of Games or any other third party. Basically saying if you don't own it, don't make it. Don't in any way think that we're giving you rights to say something is yours or to take an image and say it's yours or use it without. I guess in a blanket way that says, say this was a Warlord game thing, do not use it, right? It's again some of these things are a little bit behind, I think, for what people can actually do with these models now, depending on the type of machine you have. I even went here to Privateer Press, and they have things like, I want to make a movie or video game. They say no. Brick and mortar, can I use what can I use your site to enhance my sites? Want to sell stuff on eBay? Basically, yeah, I'm just going through it again, and I don't really see anything that talks too much about trademark other than don't use what's ours. Now, Games Workshop was a little bit more specific in some of their stuff, right? Celebrating the hobby, right? Keep it non-commercial. Whenever you're doing should be produced simply for the entertainment of you and other hobbyists. No money should change hands. If you are receiving payment from these activities, paying someone else for them, or using them to promote a business or product, then this will likely be infringement on one or more of our IP rights. There's no professional distribution. Do not damage our brands. Make it clear what you're doing is entirely unofficial. Again, that's covering a whole bunch of different things. But they do get down here. Oh, where is it? I saw it, and now I can't find it. Non-commercial recasting and 3D printing. So this is the only one that actually has a concrete point on it, right? And they say, do not cast or scan any materials based on Games Workshop's IP. Reproduction for personal use is not an automatic exemption from copyright protection in many territories worldwide. So again, it depends on the country. I know the Canadian version of IP protection is different from the American one. Places like Russia and China don't even recognize ours, and for the most part don't have their own unless they're protecting something that is state-made. Let's see here. Where else does it say? Likewise, do not produce and distribute designs to substantially copy Games Workshop products, and then they get into things like counterfeiting. Right? Basically, that would be stuff like this, right? Or maybe even to a certain extent, the ship here. And say Games Workshop showing this. If I printed a ton of these off and tried to sell them, I'm counterfeiting, right? So really, that's kind of all I really wanted to discuss on that. I just want to put that out there. Now, again, it's those gray areas. So what do you guys, this really is video just to get the thought process out there. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that this is something that will change the way we buy our models in the future? At some point, Games Workshop and all these other companies are going to start realize, well, maybe if enough people get these 3D printers, I don't think we're there yet. Could they start selling STL files? Maybe STL files that print out a sprue for you. You want 10 intercessors? Here, print out the sprues. Here's the STL file. Print them out. And then you've got the sprues. Ba-doom. Right? What do you sell an STL file for? In Canada here, you can pay, I believe it's somewhere around $30, $35, $40 and up for a character. But that's because you're going to the store, you're buying the packaging. How much you sell an STL file for? $10, $20, $25, $30, the exact same price as if I went in to buy the character, even though I'm building it for my own materials on my own time. Just a lot of thoughts I want to get out there. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys. I'm going to let you, please, leave comments. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that this is something that will be the future of the miniature wargaming world? Do you think this is something that will continue to be used to take advantage of companies? Do you think it's harmless? Do you think that it's something that's just sort of a fad for now, or is this the future? Personally, I think it's relatively harmless as long as you sort of stay in those areas where it's like I'm just doing it for myself. I'm not looking to make money. I'm not looking to make a name. I'm literally looking just to get some models, maybe some terrain, whatever. Things like, the little dungeon master here, right? I just print off because I remember the cartoon. I just wanted to have a little figure dungeon master. I'll paint him up, and I'll probably put him on display in my display cabinet there. That'll be the extent of it. Things like these ones were I even painted this one up. Were printed out specifically for this video to showcase what you can do and sort of the gray areas of IP. Yeah, again, the giant worm that I already had on my videos beforehand, just something that I thought was really cool, wanted to paint up and display. That's it. I really honestly don't see the harm in that. It's when you start getting into copying someone else's hard work, their time, their R&D, their money, and then trying to pass off as your own or trying to make money off of it. That's personally where I think it's not so good. But guys, let me know, please. And yeah, I mean, and one other thing, just pop in mind, cost. Obviously, a lot of people do this because miniature wargaming is an expensive hobby, and obviously people want to save money. It's not going to get any less expensive. There are hundreds of different reasons why prices are increasing, all the way from corporate greed, which a lot of people say, which I agree with, to the different pay rates. There's a tons of reasons. I could do another video on that. I think I might actually. But yeah, another reason why people do it, try and keep those costs down. Why would I go in and pay $70 for models when I could take, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, have them printed off? They'll could possibly be they'll be around the same, maybe somewhere around the same quality, probably a little bit worse depending on the machine, but I'd still have the models and I wouldn't have to shell out $70 for them, right? But again, I'll leave it there. I'm rambling now. Please let me know what you think when it comes to 3D printing, where it's going, which side are you on, and please keep it civil. Everybody's going to have their own opinions. That's cool. I'll leave it there, guys. So thank you very much for sitting through this. And as always, I'll see you next video. Keep rolling those dice. See you later.